There it is.
Got it.
Is everybody good now?
Yeah.
Okay, Dutch is at a solar convention in Las Vegas, so he will not be joining us tonight.
Is his name spelled D-U-C-H?
It is, yes. Yes, that
And is that
his...
short for something?
Nope, that's his legal name, is Dutch.
Is he Dutch?
Nope, he's from Iowa.
Well, in deference to the sun god Ra, we'll excuse his absence from tonight's meeting. Harnessing the power of the sun. I do have some business to talk at some point before we get going. Let me know when we want to do that, Tim.
Go for it.
Okay. You may have heard I was in Illinois at the national headquarters of the Theosophical Society in America. May have mentioned that. Well, I was there. The culminating event that I attended was Theosopfest. No, I'd never been to such a thing in my life. I didn't really know what to expect. What I got was 130 vendors of all sorts of Illinois hippie weirdness, offering multitudes of services and lots of cool stuff, lots of really friendly people and big smiles. We had about 3,000 attendees out there, and the entire grounds was full of cars. Not my favorite part. But there was a lot of cars, and I was one of the greeters and greeting everybody as they pulled in. Maybe the first theosophic face they get to see, telling them, "This is for you. $5 parking fee will go to them. Have a great day," like 1,000 times. Anyhow, to the business. Johnny had asked about whether or not there's a membership, and there is. I am a member of the Theosophical Society in America. And what I would like to do is I'd hope one day we could make this a formalized study center. Like there's a map on the website, and if we could put a pin in Santa Fe at some point, I think that would be a point of pride for me. And it's a affirmation that we're growing the Theosophic movement in America. And there's going to be some things we have to do to make that happen. One of it is that we have to have at least 3 members in the study group. You know, I can count as a member. I can be a member of 2 lodges, so that's not a problem. But we need to formalize this process. So that said, theosophical types, not real big joiners. They don't want to get put in a box and all that. And I understand. So to incentivize this, I got these applications at Theosopfest, which is a 1-day only offer. Normally, to become a Theosophist, it's $72 a year, but no, your friend John got you the 1-day only flyer that drops your annual price down to $50, solid $50. You send this thing in on the special form, they'll know it, and I already checked the member services person. Said, hey, listen, Beverly, I'm going to tell my people about this. I want to make sure you don't hassle them on the other side. She swears she's going to honor the $50. That's a 30% savings. Hold on a second. With this membership, you get fellowship in the International Theosophical Society headquartered in Andyar, Chennai, India. You get subscription to Quest, our quarterly magazine. You get borrowing privileges from the Henry S. Olcott Memorial Library. They'll just send you stuff in the mail. You just got to pay to send it back. You get 24 monthly new member letters discussing the basic concepts of theosophy. This was super meaningful to me. I learned a ton from these letters. You get discounts on purchases at the Quest bookstores in California and Illinois and New York. Discounts on public lectures and workshops, invitations to special member-only events, online interactive study groups, and you may request your first year of free e-membership to the National Lodge Study Program if you so choose. So, if any of you would like me to send you one of these applications, that's one, Tim. I'll get one to you. Anybody else?
Yeah,
well, I'm already
send one to me.
All around?
I'm already a $72 member.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. I was just gonna say that you totally can borrow books and get the discounts on all the books and stuff. Like I've done all that. It does. Let's do it.
It's super sweet.
Yeah.
Okay. So Pamela, I can get your email?
Yeah, I actually gave it once.
Then
Did
I'll get
you?
it elsewhere. We're being recorded, so don't
Okay,
say it. But I'll get it
okay.
from. I'll get it. And Johnny, I can get yours. And
Yeah.
all right, I'll get those out to you guys. If I said by the end of next week we would send them in. So if you guys can complete these and send them in by the end of next week, I will look like I upheld my commitment. And we'll be on our way to getting our pin on the map. I don't know what other hoops they want us to jump through. I'm sure they're positive if they ever watch us in the future. But we're gonna jump through the hoops, and this is our first step. So thank you very much. And Mr. Chairperson, I give you back the floor.
Is that me?
Yeah, that's totally you.
Okay, all right. By the way, like I've sent out that email every evening, every Tuesday evening, just a reminder with the meeting link on it. That seems to be working better than my previous method, but I'm not like CCing or BCCing everybody in that. I'm just adding the names because it's like it's just us.
Okay, so I just get it there.
Yeah, everybody's email should be.
Got it. That's where I'll get it.
Okay.
Also, a comment about Theosophy in Santa Fe. I think if the word were to get out there, there'd be more people interested. So it's a matter of people out here figuring out how to get to the Zoom. In other words, people that I don't know, because I have known people that were very interested in Theosophy out here in the past.
We spent a lot of time talking about this sort of thing in Illinois about, where the Venn diagrams cross of interested people and Theosophy and who we should, reach out to and different ways of making this happen. But I would think somewhere like Santa Fe would be full of people who would, appreciate this and have already have beliefs like really adjacent with Theosophy, if not Theosophical themselves.
I have a quick question on all that. And so, promoting this deal, is this something that, is there a statute or of some sort, or is there a conversation that's been had, pertaining to like promoting Theosophy, or kind of like, is it an attraction rather than promotion kind of deal? What does that look like?
The way
you want to put like a big post? Go ahead, Tim.
So the way it was explained to me by some people from the national headquarters and Ron through emails when I first started talking about trying to put this together was I was told we do not proselytize, and that's a little bit of a conundrum when you're trying to start something like this, right? Like we're not missionaries, we're not going out there trying to theosophize the entire world. It's more like if you're led to this, or if you're drawn to this, if you're interested in this, you'll search it out and you'll find it, right? They make it
Tim,
available to be found. And I'm like,
there's a variable in what you're talking about. Proselytizing isn't advertising. Proselytizing is trying to convince people of something.
Yes.
And so advertising that we are available is not proselytizing.
I completely agree. And that is kind of the mindset I took when I set up the meetup group and the Zoom and all that. Was like I just put it out there, right? And like I know meetup is maybe not the greatest platform, right? Like not a ton of people are on there. But I mean some people have like shown up, like the random people that were in the last week's meeting. They came from meetup. Pamela, you found it on meetup. And Mackenzie did too. So it's working, right? Slowly, but it's working. But I'm
I think this, Tim, that the problem of people not being able to sign in through new meetup. I have to sign in through email to get onto the Zoom. I don't know if everybody has that problem.
No, I hate
but that might be why but we might have lost a couple of people because of it.
So the meetup app, it lets you select a location, right, for the event. And then under location, you can select online event. And when you select online event, it syncs the meetup with my Zoom account. So it matches the meeting link with the Zoom account, but it messes up the Zoom link every single time I sync it, and it creates some weird link that doesn't make any sense. And then when I go and try to edit it in the meetup app, it doesn't let me save it. It says it cannot save it under this format. Like it has to be the link between the two apps, and it just isn't working. And I've tried deleting and reloading and like tried it a million ways, I promise.
Well, maybe we need to move over to like a Facebook platform or something like that.
We can. Yep.
you know, with a Facebook page or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of action on that. There are a lot of events on there. I'm not a huge fan, but you know, you go where the people are.
Yep.
Hmm.
So,
Anyhow, we're gonna.
chapter 5.
That's where we're at.
All right. I really enjoyed this chapter. But I've enjoyed every one of these chapters. I probably say that every time we start talking or whatever. This one was, I don't know, this one is especially meaningful for me. I think it kind of explained something. And honestly, when I read this chapter for the first time, I did not get this out of it. Like, I did not take this from it. And so this was almost like reading, you know, an entirely new concept. And I thought that was wonderful. That the first thing I underlined was middle of the first paragraph or end of the first paragraph, first page. Just realizing the truths that the concepts merely point to, right? Like, these concepts aren't the truths. It's not, you know, a teaching or a doctrine. This is just pointing to, this is a concept pointing to a truth.
I underlined the same sentence.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we're all on the same page.
You know, it's you know, you can't put it into words, right? The reality is not words, and so you're not going to be able to read it and get it. That's just the means to get it, right? It's something that's not words. So,
you know, we've talked about that. This stuff has been mentioned probably every meeting. So maybe there's something to it, right? If it gets brought up every single meeting.
I have a question. Did anybody know what the word erudition means before they read this chapter? I had no idea, so I went and looked it up, and it's metaphors and analogies, parables. No. The quality of having or showing great knowledge or learning scholarship. Sorry, I was reading another thing that I had written down there.
The word you're referring to is spelled with an E, right? Because I don't see it.
Erudition. It's like
There it is.
6 or 7 lines down from the
from the
top.
top.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it basically, yeah, I see it. The word is knowledge. I mean, if you want to
Right.
simplify everything that you said, that's how
Mhm.
you having knowledge is to
Right.
be erudite is having
Yep.
knowledge.
And what's cool about that is that when I look words up like that I don't understand, and then I go back and reread the sentence with a new understanding of the word, it makes so much more sense, and I can better understand it. You know, so instead of, it says, although study is certainly part of this path, this is not intended as a means of developing knowledge, erudition, but rather as a tool to awaken higher perceptions. I love that. And then, you know, you guys were all talking about that last sentence about realizing, you know, if you see realizing is italicized, you know, I was also taught that when something's italicized, it's very important. The author's trying to get a point across, you know, with that word or sentence or whatever. So,
But you notice it doesn't say, you know, knowing the truths or understanding the truths, right? You realize you're realizing them. You know,
Something about study. I was at a different group a few days ago that are also into metaphysics. I don't go very often because it's a little bit too random for me. Although they're pretty deep. And so one of the persons asked how to walk the walk without those words, different words. And I said, study. But it's true what this sentence says. Study is the beginning. But then how you get there is your own personal path. Without study, maybe somebody is an illuminated being without study, but unless one is an illuminated being without study, study is how you begin. And therefore erudition. Line I had is describe a dimension of life that does not belong to what we experience with our personal nature, but to realities perceived by our higher consciousness. Anybody want to do that? Describe a dimension of life that does not belong to what we experience daily?
Hmm.
The last sentence in the second paragraph.
Sometimes I think that for me, that can be as simple as like listening to a coworker or somebody talk about some random situation, right? Maybe a something that's happened with another coworker, or something that's going on in their personal life or whatever, and then just processing that differently than them, like they're thinking about the situation, very literally, and then sometimes you'll hear them talking about it, and it's like, oh, okay, well, this is really not that important. This is just kind of what happens in life, and there's really no reason to get stressed out about it. Like, it's not going to matter in 30 minutes. And but to them at that
Hmm.
point in time, it's such a big deal, or the people at work that they are getting really stressed out, running themselves ragged. And it's just like, slow down, dude, take a breath. Like, this will be here tomorrow. It'll be okay. And then, but they just don't have that attitude, It's just like, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go, gotta go, gotta make more money, work 7 days a week, work 7 days a week. And it's like, whoa, dude, and it's like, I understand the desire to make money, and the desire to be productive, and to try to get ahead at work, or to be, the best employee or whatever. But it's that slowdown is, I guess, what it is. And that's kind of been coming pretty naturally to me lately, is just the don't get too worked up, don't get too upset. So they put a big workload on me or whatever, and that's fine, right? Like, I'll get it done as fast as I can, and that's okay. And what I've noticed is that when I slow down, take the time to breathe and to think and to do, and like, I spend a lot of time thinking about this kind of stuff. If I have computer time at work or whatever, like office time when I come out of the field, and I'll sit there for a minute and just kind of start, zoning off out in the la la land, thinking about some of this stuff. And it, for a moment, takes my mind off of what I'm doing. And then, like, I come back to my work, and I've got a different attitude about it and everything. And I feel like that's kind of, this is another thing that's hard to explain, because it's in my mind, it's in my soul. Like, it's just a feeling more than a thing. You know what I mean? And I could just see in these other people that they don't feel that. I don't know. Does that make any sense? Does that just sound like crazy
Oh,
random?
absolutely. Yeah.
No, yeah, yeah.
There's a
I was-
line to live simply in order to simply live.
Yeah.
Mm.
4 words, and she makes it sound so easy.
Yeah, I think it's like a undeveloped muscle. And it's like we're used to using our lower mind to do things. That's the one we use, right? That's the strong thing. And then we've got this weak, undeveloped muscle that can sense something. And with our mind, because it's close to our mind, like we can kind of get an idea of it if you're paying attention, if you're tuned in and you're paying attention. And this could be things like energy dynamics at work, right? It's like everybody's got some feeling, and like, or even in crowds, when you get this crowd mentality where everybody's getting worked up. But if you actually pay attention to the energetics that go amongst people, and how like the things flow, and these aren't like isolated things. Crazy stuff happens in crowd dynamics and in traffic dynamics and things like this. And if you like say, okay, I'm not going to look at just my little view, I'm going to expand this. You can see these energetics at work. And if we get out of our physical reality and we pay attention, but you can only pay attention passively, because it's not like an active pay attention to it. You know what I mean? It's not that muscle. It's just that muscle can tell when you're working out this other very more there's a word for it, but it's much more subtle. It's a much more subtle muscle. It's a much more subtle perception. And because it's easy to ignore. It's easy to have your grosser perceptions override it and not be able to even notice it's happening. But if you can get your grosser perceptions under control and you can start to like perceive this subtle thing, it's everywhere, right?
Mm.
I don't know if that makes sense, but that's how I perceive that.
It totally makes sense, and I'm pretty sure that's what they talk about later on in
I'm
this
pretty
chapter.
sure I'm taking it right from the book. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
That's what I was thinking. You used that metaphor about the muscle, and I like that. I was thinking about, the question was, and I'll repeat it, was I'll just read the whole sentence. The reason for this is that for the most part, they describe a dimension of life that does not belong to what we experience with our personal nature, but to realities perceived by our higher consciousness. So what that just brings me right to is how do I do that? Well, meditation, centering myself, breath work, all those things that strengthen that muscle for me. But when I'm in the hustle bustle of the day or in that crowd mentality, as you talked about, John, it's like, of course I'm far away from that. I have to, for me, it's like a constant go back to centering myself, get centered, get centered, get centered,
No, you can't be driven by desire, and it's really hard not to. Like, if Tim's got a ton of work to do, he desires to get his work done. I mean, is that a bad thing? Right? We desire to get home to our families. We desire like lots of stuff, and you can't be in desire. You have to get over that, and that's really, really hard, right? It's hard not to want things, but that's kind of where that starts.
I'm going to give you a line that you may or may not be familiar with. Desire first arose in it. Do you know that line? It's a theosophic thing. And I wouldn't want to try to go into it.
What came before the chicken and the egg? The desire to
That's
exist.
pretty much, that's it. Desire first arose in it. And
I'm
so
familiar with that.
basically, if I were to say something about it, I would say separation came at that point. But separation came because of learning. And if we didn't go through all the permutations of living, we wouldn't learn. And so by learning, we get back to the it and desirelessness.
That's the other way back.
Does anybody
fun,
feel,
Pamela? It's always fun talking theosophy with you.
Does anybody feel like during the course of a day, you just kind of randomly float in between like the lower mind, the manas or the buddhi manas, it's just like, it's kind of like I don't control it.
It's weird to come to work with buddhi manas. I gotta say,
that's
and
the
be
day I
like,
forget my lunch.
like I'm floating on a cloud, and it's like, oh, this isn't appropriate here. Like no one else is like this, and it's just like, oh, let me try and give a shit about normal stuff for a second, because I really don't. And it's a weird place to be in the regular world.
Sometimes so this dude named TJ, we share an office or whatever, and the other day he was just like, what are you thinking about, man? Because I guess I was just floating off or something. And so I go off and rattle off a bunch of stuff, and I was like, I was just thinking about this physical reality, how it's not real, and our existence is actually much broader than that. And he was just like, whoa, bro, shut the fuck up, man. I was talking about work, dude. And it's like, okay, all right. Yeah. Shouldn't ask. Maybe I shouldn't tell. But
I am definitely happy I'm not working for a living.
I can't wait for that.
Well, there's still work to be done for all of us.
Oh, I meant the work that means money.
Whether you're punching in or not,
Yeah.
there's work to be done, and the punching in certainly makes it harder to do the other work.
Another line on that page, just if we want to go ahead to something, that words and concepts are not enough to produce a real understanding of the last line of the page, which basically goes to that idea of study, back to that idea of study. Words and concepts aren't enough. You have to incorporate them into your personhood.
The next thing I had underlined is the next page. It says one has to get a knowledge of spiritual facts by personal experience and from actual observation.
Yep, that's a good line. I had that line in the mark too.
Yep, yep. So the next thing I had underlined is the very bottom of the big paragraph, and it's just spiritual eyes. That this map must be read with the spiritual eyes. And I know I skipped a lot, so if anybody wants to backtrack, please do so. But I like that. I like that spiritual eyes, right? Like, what is spiritual eyes?
Where are you reading?
Page 42, closer to the bottom. Like you've got the first little paragraph and then a big one. It's kind of at the bottom of the big one.
When our attention is always turned toward the mundane, the brain is shaped to receive only material perceptions and produce concrete thoughts. That's the last line on that page.
Yeah, no. The second big paragraph. So you see the indentation. First, let the student clearly realize, just directly above that.
Ah,
Yeah, but then you were asking what is that, Tim? That spiritual eyes. It describes it right there. First, let the student clearly realize he cannot see things spiritual with the eyes of the flesh. And that in studying, he must use the eyes of the spiritual intelligence. All this stuff, man, every bit of this, from chapter 1 on, the thing that resounds the most with me is meditation. And I don't even know if it really uses the word meditation in here anywhere. Not that I've written, not that's really stood out to me, but that's what's rang true in my mind is like, this stuff takes a lot more than just reading and studying and writing notes and jotting stuff down and highlighting and underlining things. This is, for me, has been a process of meditation, quiet time, and seeing what my, quote unquote spiritual eyes are trying to show me. Every bit of this, man, has been all that for me.
I actually wrote
that
meditation in next to spiritual eyes.
Johnny, that is definitely part of theosophy, meditation.
100%.
Definitely suggested. In other words, there's no rules, but the suggestion, and one of the suggestions is minimally, even though some people might not want to tell you this because it creates a thing in your brain about a stopping, but of 20 minutes, a minimum of 20 minutes of meditation in order to get into whatever state in order to access knowledge that we wouldn't have otherwise. And I am terrible. I mean, I'm a good meditator and I don't do it. I mean, I do it occasionally, but not regularly. But it is advised to do it regularly and to choose time of day that's best for you.
There are three pillars of theosophic study, and it's study, service, and meditation. And you have to do all three. And what they're talking, you got it already. You're aiming to be in that meditative state all the time. So good idea to go there sometimes if that's the goal, right? Is if what you're trying is to always be in that. And when you're walking through life, like that's where your head's at, and that's how you're relating with people. And that's what it's a practice so that you can just do that. This is the way of the Buddha. But that's kind of where it is, and where you're disassociated with to you're perceiving all of this, and you're not trying to control it with your brain. You've trained that muscle of perception, and then you just kind of stay in that spot and you react from there instead of dropping back down to physical reality and letting all your brain chemicals and stuff take over and have emotional reactions.
Really like the way they describe it.
Buddha. That's what you do.
Like a blind person being described colors, Like they could probably grasp the concept of it, but if you've never actually seen colors, you know what I mean?
I don't know if they could. I mean, when they described snow to people, they were like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You get people from the islands and they see snow and it's like completely mind-blowing, and you can tell they can watch movies and stuff, but some things, until you do it for yourself, it ain't the same. I think that's what we're talking about.
I actually took some pictures of a rainbow coming home from work yesterday. I sent to Brittany because it was a double rainbow, right? but it was like we were so close to it, and it was so bright and thick, like you could see it when you drove through it. Like it was right there on the road in the mountains or whatever, and you could drive through it, and it was, but like coming up to it, coming around the mountains and seeing it, and like seeing how thick it was, and like it was, I've never seen one like this before. It was super bright,
Wow.
super awesome. But try to describe that to a blind person.
Mm.
You know, it's hard to describe it to you guys. And unless you saw it, you know, or saw the pictures or whatever, then you'd have a pretty good idea of it. But just like these floating particles of colored light, you know, I don't know, man. Pretty hard to
I
grasp.
think with enough enthusiasm, man, you could definitely bring about some excitement if you explained it the right way. I'm not sure that they would have a perfect mental image of what you were describing, but I think there would definitely be some enthusiasm, you know. I mean, like, man, you got to see this, what I'm seeing right now, you know, and you know, kind of ramble on to them. Yeah, I agree with that, man. Like, you know, for instance, you know, Tim had sent me pictures and I'd seen on Facebook and stuff about like Santa Fe, you know, and I was like, man, that's freaking gorgeous. I want to go see that, you know. And just like anywhere else that I've been, that people have described or I've seen in movies or whatever, it's not the same unless you see it in person. Pictures do not do, uh, you know, nature justice by any means.
Yeah, it never does. See, there's a, as we've seen in previous chapters, the secret doctrine was written to exercise the mind in a way that is never touched by other studies, so that it may become receptive to the higher consciousness. Like, I thought that was interesting to think that she wrote it in a manner that makes your brain exercise differently, you know? And I guess I could see that. So I went to the gym last week, right? And lifted weights for the first time in years. And I got on this machine that you push up, right? And it got me right here. I don't think I've ever worked out that muscle. I've never been on that machine before. And like I couldn't move my arms for like a week. Like it was terrible. It hurt. It was painful. You know, and I've experienced something similar to that in this study, and I feel like this explains it, right? Like this is a muscle I've never exercised, this is a way I've never studied, and it's frustrating sometimes, especially when you first start out. Like just I would get frustrated with all of the words that I didn't know, like the Sanskrit words or the Hindu words, or you know, technical terms that I'd never heard before. And it seems like you start reading through it and there's just like so many of them, you know. It's almost like you got to take a break for a second. Like I'm getting frustrated. Like I'm getting tired of looking up every third word. And but if you just keep doing it, right, you keep at it, it becomes less and less painful. And then at a certain point, it's almost enjoyable. I don't know.
How do you consume an elephant?
One bite at a time.
That's right, man. Yeah, so if you go over to page 43, um it's like, what is that? The third or fourth paragraph, the first big paragraph: to produce this effect, however, study must be more than the accumulation of information. And I don't know why, I out to the side of that, I wrote, read this 3 times. So I did, and then I read that like 3 or 4 times, you know, to produce this effect, however, study must be more than the accumulation of information, you know, and I put in the work, you know, and once again, I'm gonna plug into meditation again. You know, that's just what that's screaming to me. You know, it's more than, of course, like Pamela said, I have to study this stuff. I have to read it. You know, I have to analyze it. I have to see what it means to me. You know, jot down my notes, all that stuff. But then, and kind of touching on what Tim was just talking about. You know, I read like a page. You know, sometimes 2, and then I just stop there. You know, and I don't want to. I want to keep going. I want to keep going. I want to keep reading and jamming it in because it's so interesting, but I also want to digest it, you know, rather than just kind of, you know, not do that. So I found that interesting.
You know, when I read in the evenings, it never fails that like at some point, like I'll shut myself in the bedroom and I'll start reading, and then just like right outside the bedroom door, the kids start getting really loud, or like they'll play with all the dogs right by the door, and it's super distracting. And I'll end up getting stuck on one paragraph, right? And I'll read it over and over and over and over, and I start getting frustrated because I'm not actually reading it, because I'm just focusing on this loud ass noise out the bedroom door, right? But what ends up happening is that I end up reading this paragraph, and it may be even a little one or something, and I read it over and over and over until I ended up, it happened tonight actually. I was just rereading through some stuff and going through my notes and everything, and I got stuck on a paragraph that I did not have anything underlined in. And I bet I read it 5 times before I finally actually read it all the way through with an understanding, and it was like,
Mm.
and I think, so that's another one of those things, maybe, John. It's almost metaphysical, the timing that the kids distract me, like it's on purpose, something beyond is like, hey, you really
can choose
need
to pay
keep,
attention to it or not, right?
yeah.
You
So it's
know,
like,
and you could ignore it and say, oh, it's nothing.
Yeah.
But it did happen.
Yeah.
Right. And you start like, well, okay, but it did happen. You get enough of those things stringed along in your life. And now all of a sudden you're participating in something different. And if you're called to account for it, right, and be like, okay, do you really believe? Well, that's something else. But if you're just intuiting it, you're just paying attention to the things that act your rainbow and all this stuff. If you're just paying attention, Johnny, you're vine growing, just like you're conscious of what's going on around you. Life's different. And to call into account like why it's special, or have to defend yourself. Well, screw that, man. That you can just intuit it and experience it. And I think that's better for me. The realization in the study. Like I was there, I was getting the words, I was paying attention, but that age of Brahman thing. And I'd gotten there, and it's 750 million billion years, and I was like, that's stupid. This stupid. This is the only thing I could think of, and I was like, all this other stuff makes sense to me, and I hate it when they like call me to defend something stupid, and this is like a big deal. It's a big part of the philosophical conception of all this. And I came to a moment, and it just clicked. It was just like, no, man, we're putting you in perspective. And I couldn't understand it until I conceived of myself differently. It was because I was coming from my little human perspective that it seemed like it was like this impossible thing, and I had to get out of that. And so this whole thing, and it just, there was a moment I just popped out. I was like, oh, that's what it's all about, And I couldn't read that, right? I couldn't read that. I had to like wrap my mind around this stupid number before I realized that I was the one that was stupid. and like, oh, okay. And it all like became plain.
The analogy or metaphor used for that in Theosophy is the closing and the opening of the eyes of Brahma. That's how long all those years lasted.
Mm.
The bottom of the same page that we're looking at, about middle of the last paragraph, says absolute is omnipresent. Think of this reality as existing in the good person as well as in the murderer and the beautiful flower and in the foul refuse. That actually has to do with something we were talking about last week. And John, you used the metaphor of the song Sympathy for the Devil, which I had never heard about. And then I looked it up, looked at the lyrics. The lyrics aren't that impressive to me anyway. But the idea of it is fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous. And that's what this is saying. And the other thing that I found, that this is just little piece of data. When Mick Jagger was 20, somebody asked him if he'd be doing the same thing when he's 60, and he says, sure. And the interviewer didn't believe it. Now he's 80 doing the same thing. But the other thing about that was that song caused the riot at Altamont. If you remember this, anybody? Where the Hells Angels were protecting the program at Speedway.
Yeah, that's what they hired to do security, was the Hells Angels.
Are you talking about Woodstock?
No. This is on the West Coast. This is the they don't talk about it nearly as much.
Oh, okay.
But they had the Hells Angels do the security for this show. And yeah, Pamela, you can.
They only last big deal was that a guy died. One guy
Hmm.
died.
Hmm.
Only
there was a
one for the
big
Hells
riot.
Angels. That's not bad.
Yeah, dude.
It's them who killed the guy. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
this page 43 is the one I've got the most marks on. Like I've marked it up more than any other page so far in this chapter. And it's that last paragraph, the one you just read, Pamela. I think, John, I was actually talking to you about this last week or whatever. I had this SAR mission that we went on, a search mission, and it was like we were really dealing with the you know, the more evil, worse side of humanity, kind of where we were and what was going on and some of the stuff. Like, I mean, to explain, they called off the search mission and they turned it into a homicide investigation. And some of the people that we had interviewed and some of the areas that we had searched was just really, really, I don't even know the word to describe it. It was terrible, right? You know, and then, you know, I was talking to John, right? He's at Theosophist and he's on the other end of the spectrum, you know, like the beautiful side of humanity. And then the conversation came up like, man, it's kind of hard to be around stuff that evil and that bad, and then to consider yourself one with them, you know. Anyways, I found
it was valuable for me to just get the other side of the coin right there, you know, and I'm with all the happy, beautiful hippie people, you know, making music and doing the drum circle and like, you know, really like you people who value life. And Tim tells this story and it's like, hey buddy, guess what? It ain't all that, you know.
yeah.
And you did a very good job describing it in the video. But it's true, and it's important to remember that. And for the people who cut themselves off from that reality, and they try and create the just the happy life that doesn't include any of that, you know, they're deluding themselves. You know, it's all part of the picture. And we don't get to just choose the good stuff. So I really appreciated that levity, Tim, and that was something I meditated on as I walked the grounds, and you know what it really meant, and you know how removed from that I am, and how I relate with that aspect of humanity. I asked some questions of my fellow Theosophists who were attending, based on that idea, because yeah, I mean, you don't get a pick. Right, you can't say it's unity and Parabrahm and Atman and we're all one and all this stuff, and
Except
not
them,
take it
right?
all.
Yeah,
Except those guys suck.
Yeah,
Which they do. But again, they're us guys too. So
yeah.
there are people.
You know, I guess in the end of it all, it's just kind of like I almost feel lucky that that's not me. You know, that I found this other way of living and this other way of thinking, and that I found, you know, the sobriety and the theosophy and all these things. Like, because who's to say, man? You know, by any, you know, circumstance in any series of events, that could have been any of us in a situation like that, if things had gone differently in life, or if things had, you know, whatever, you know. None of us are above or beyond it.
That's a tough lesson to be learning in this go around, right? And I'm glad I'm not signed up for that program, because that's a tough lesson. Anybody involved, right? Anybody involved in that in any capacity, my life's better than all them, and I'm just tremendously thankful.
Yeah, I think that was kind of my final verdict on it all. So, gratitude.
Sorry, Pam, I really don't want him to describe it again.
It was bad. It was really bad. If you turn to page 44, the very first paragraph, I've got the last full sentence, which is kind of a long one, underlined, and then I've got hard to do, harder to stick with it written next to it. I really thought that, you know, what matters is the earnest inquiry about questions that are not concrete, that are essentially beyond the mundane mind, for it is through this kind of exertion that we stimulate the awakening of higher perceptions. You know, and it just seemed to me like one of those things that it's kind of easy to be curious a little bit about this stuff, maybe get started in it or whatever, but to really stick with it and to really put some effort and time and longevity into studying stuff that is an exertion, that is difficult or whatever. It just seems like it's something that's hard for a lot of people to stick with. More gratitude, and the fact that I've been able to stick with it, and it's been something that's seemed to be more and more meaningful to me as time goes on.
I think it's a matter of discipline and commitment. Have you been taught that? Have you taught yourself that? Have you been trained to do that? It's like, when I make a commitment to something, I'm going to do my absolute very best to stay committed to it, to give it a shot, not let my human mind get too far in the way. Like, oh, the first few pages, oh, I can't understand this. This is, blah, blah, blah. This goes against, but, and then just give it up.
There's a line a little bit further down that has to do with what you're talking about. It's the end of the second full paragraph. It says, we become great knowers, but remain poor thinkers. And most of the knowledge we possess is secondhand, not much better than hearsay. What I like about that is what you referred to, Johnny, earlier about erudition, and what I said about that's knowledge. Knowledge only ever takes you so far. And I think one of the ways that people identify with theosophy is not necessarily intellectual. That intellectual can sometimes even be a hardship, because then you're looking at the words and doing exactly what you said. Can't understand the words, I'm going to stop the study because I am so brilliant and I'm so smart that I can do it. There's an intuitive part of the individual that will recognize what's happening, whether or not they understand the words.
Pamela,
Spiritualized.
that whole paragraph, like you read the last sentence of it, but that whole paragraph, that was one of the paragraphs that I read several times over. So there's, I work at the lab, right? So it's not my direct colleagues, but there's people that I kind of indirectly work with or for during the different projects that we do. And most of them are PhDs, like physicists and chemists and scientists or whatever. And then, just to talk to those guys, and they do act superior, and smarter and more intellectual, and they look down on you, right? Because you're not as smart as them. You're not a PhD. And you can just get that. They just have that. It's just that energy flows out of them, And then talking to people like Arvin, which Arvin will be back, by the way. He got a hold of me too. He has been in Portugal on business. So he's one of the few people I've met that is, he's a PhD. He's an astrophysicist, like an actual literal rocket scientist. And but he's interested in spiritual things, right? Well, it comes from his upbringing. He was raised, in India, poor Hindu. And so the spiritual side of stuff's always been back there, right? And then the smarter he gets and the more educated he gets, the more he kind of pushes it away. And then now he's here at his profession and he's coming back to it, But it's like from some of the talks I've had with him, I can just see this, it's like, that whole paragraph talks about the way we learn things nowadays does not set you up to study and learn, esoteric or occult philosophies. It doesn't. It's just, It's very regimented. You're spoon fed. Like it doesn't, let me find the sentence here. Most of the work is done for us. Everything is pre-digested. As a result, the majority of us feel reluctant to work harder to gain a deeper understanding. This is the sentence. Our memory is well exercised, but our mental powers are hardly ever stimulated. We become great knowers, but remain poor thinkers. And that's what a ton of stuff, man. There's a lot of knowledge, a lot of information up here, but when it comes to thinking, right?
Krishnamurti says, don't read a book. He says, don't read a book. Don't listen to other people. What are you doing? You think other people are going to give you the answer? Dude, it's not outside of yourself. like stop thinking about things, stop knowing stuff, stop like comparing things with things that you're already in your mind. You're not seeing reality because you already know so much, because been there, done that, right? Because you've already got these labels. And so Krishnamurti, you know, he thinks all this stuff. He thinks we're not, I don't know how I would feel about this, honest, because I feel like we are still using our independent minds to go forward in this. But his general idea was like, man, you got to deconstruct things, not construct things. And in the accumulation of knowledge, you're just constructing more and more stuff you're going to have to take down. It's a real different way of thinking things, and it sounds anti-intellectual, but it's not intellectual. This is spiritual. And that's why it sounds like that. So yeah, I mean, you know, yeah, I got a PhD. Well, I got a lot built up. You know, I got a lot invested in the physical world, right? Where everybody thinks I'm really smart and cool and pays me pretty good for it. You know, I'm very heavily invested in this. And the people, the most spiritual people, yeah, they're not very invested in the physical world. That's not where they put all their eggs. And so that makes sense to me. Right. I mean, it's natural. That's why the Buddhist monks are asking for alms, and they're not, you know, just making tons of cash. Anyway, seems like that.
I have a question, John, just because I've never understood it. What is deconstruction?
Physical deconstruction, a societal deconstruction?
Define it. I don't understand it.
All right, so all this stuff is a construct, right? Everything. Like everything. Strip it all back and into true nature. And then look at what we built up. Now, some of it's ideas, some of it's things, some of it's railroads, and some of it's factories, and some of it's, you know, educational systems and ways of thinking. And these things all started with their germ, and they've since evolved into all of these things and mutated into unrecognizable forms of what they initially became as the germ. And going through and recognizing these things, you know, I do a lot of pruning of my trees here in my house. And, you know, things go dead and they go errant and they go the wrong way, and they start causing problems elsewhere, and they start shadowing out other things. And so other things can't grow. And so you go and you deconstruct these things to give room and light and air to things, and things that you don't need to keep around. And you can use the resources for something better than that. And so you can turn your bike trail or your railroad tracks into bike paths so that people can go to and from for free and be healthy. And you can take your Trojan nuclear plant on the Columbia River here and tear that down and turn it into a wildlife refuge. And you can deconstruct things that we shouldn't have done in the first place and turning in something more appropriate for modern times. That's my personal definition.
Okay.
I thought that was fantastic.
That was really good, yeah.
I would have probably taken it more of a political route than you did, but I appreciate the nature route.
John's trying to stay out of the political narrative, man.
I'm
Well,
doing
you
good
should do
tonight.
that.
Back in, dude.
Yeah.
Okay, I have another sentence on the same page. Next paragraph. In fact, mere conceptual study tends to narrow the views of students, and they may become somewhat fundamentalist in their thinking, unable to see the truth in presentations that do not agree with the style that is familiar to them. Then one more from the next paragraph. Truth is beyond the range and reach of thought.
That's good stuff. You know what I was thinking about? I know that I try to keep you know, AA talk out of this deal, but you know, it definitely goes hand in hand. It correlates, you know, because it is a spiritual program in its nature. There's no dogma behind it. There's no must do's. There's none of that stuff. And so what I watch, and I'm sure Tim may be able to attest to this, is that the intellectual people that come in the rooms, right, and try to break this thing down and understand it with knowledge and intellectualism, all that kind of stuff, they have a much harder time. And a lot of times you see them, they don't make it. They just can't grasp it because they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to figure it out. And it's like, you tell them there's nothing to figure out here, man. It's a personal journey. This isn't a math equation. This isn't a freaking, history book. This isn't a test we're going to take where you're going to get some medal or some check marks or a little PhD beside your name. This is something spiritual in its nature. And this is exactly the same, in my opinion. The concept is the same. Yeah, that's what came to my mind when you said that.
I've always been surprised at how similar AA was to all this stuff. And that's kind of what I thought. I was actually talking to a guy, me and Johnny both know. His name's Michael D. And that's what he was saying. I was telling him about Theosophy. And he was like, dude, you do realize that AA is that same spiritual program. It's just for complete drunk idiots. And I was like, oh, yeah. Well, so,
Yeah.
This is just like the upgraded version of it, right? So get yourself sobered up and then come to this and get a little bit further along.
Yeah,
But
it's like
it's like,
advanced.
yeah, it's just a little advanced.
Yeah.
Next page, there comes that spiritualized stuff again. More italics.
I was going to say real quick on the conceptual study stuff. It's real tempting to want to give yourself a title and being like, oh, I'm an Advaita occultist, or I'm a this, or I'm a that, and like really box it in. And some people are like, oh, I'm a Jungian, and I'm a this, and they really do identify with those concepts. And I like in Theosophy, it's a big enough tent where it's like you're not boxed into something. And because if I said I was an Advaita occultist, well, I'll better be talking to Advaita Vedanta every time we're on here, right? And if I say I'm a Jungian, well, I better be, right, because I'm boxed in without label. And I like that the Theosophy label isn't that narrowing. And so when they talk about that, doing that, I absolutely have seen that. And people, it's like, now I'm defined. So
one of the things in Theosophy is that people don't say I am a Theosophist. They say I am a student of Theosophy.
I was just getting ready to ask
this is a point of contention. But yes.
Well, what's the contention? I want to hear it.
Okay.
I feel like I'm a
man,
student.
let her rip, Tater Chip.
I wanted to hear your comment, Johnny, before John made his comment.
Oh,
you were
no,
going to say something.
Yeah, that was just a random question I had in my mind at some point over the past few weeks. Was like, not that I necessarily want a title, but you hear, people say like, oh, what I'm a Baptist, or I'm a Lutheran, or I'm a Buddhist, or I'm a Muslim, or this or that, so you just answered that question though, if I were to identify with Theosophy, then I would say I'm a Theosophist, but you said no. Most people say I'm a student of Theosophy. And then John said it too. It's this broad umbrella. So it's, it's not like you're, boxed into a certain ideal. There's multiple things going on here. I think that's the whole idea of Theosophy, right?
Okay, Pamela. Yes, you're correct. We'll lead with that.
But I do want to hear your argument, John.
Okay.
That you were debating it.
Being able to give a name to something is tremendously powerful. And to not be able to give that name, right, leaves people adrift. And I think it's one of the problems in modern Theosophy is yes, I'm a member of the Theosophical Society in America. That's true. And I can say that. Tim can say that. When you guys fill out your forms, you can say that. But to say that you're a Theosophist does assume some level of achievement, some level of enlightenment to be able to have attained that.
Therefore, it's pretentious.
It was at the national headquarters. This term was used pretty freely amongst folks. And it's not in my lack of knowledge around what it means to say such a thing and identify as such a thing. but it's in a facility of application that I allow for it, and that I don't contradict people when they call me it. I certainly get called it more often than I call myself one, because I know these things, but I'm not going to contradict people. You know what I mean?
That's fine.
And only because they need to be able to put me in a box. Otherwise,
Mhm.
I remain kind of weird. And if that's the box for me, then that's cool.
Mhm.
Thanks, guys. I just this is a thing in Theosophy.
John, I think you're kind of weird no matter what box society puts you in.
Can't help it.
Weird is good. Weird is my favorite
Absolutely.
thing.
You're in good company in this group, I'd say.
Yeah, thanks, guys. How we doing? It's 8:06.
I have a line on that page. Blavatsky discouraged relying too heavily on other people's interpretations of the SD. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago, because there was that part where they have a point counterpoint by two people that are not her. And my argument was, I don't like interpretations. So this sentence is saying they don't like interpretations either of the SD directly. And by yourself, reading it yourself is different than presenting it to somebody else.
The bolded words were Blavatsky's words, and and when I read it, I tried to focus on the fact that this is what's from the Secret Doctrine, or from wherever they pulled it from and referenced it. But yeah, right. But she said to say those words, and they're not completely in context. And that's really the thing that you can kind of counter. It's like, well, it's out of context.
Totally random question here, and it's something I could have looked up myself, but which book did she write first? Was it Isis Unveiled or Secret Doctrine?
Isis Unveiled.
Okay. It was kind of a precursor.
It's a great book.
Yeah.
Very great book. I've always preferred the SD, just personally, but it's a great book. It's definitely worth reading.
Yeah. Okay.
So since we're coming to the end of our time, I wanted to say one thing from page 46. But read. By clinging to our ideas, we will tend to reject whatever may upset the superstructure we have built and close the doors to future insights. Thus, ideas previously acquired may surreptitiously act as a prison for the intellect. That actually goes to what John was describing as deconstruction.
I underlined that
Yeah.
same sentence, and I looked up a definition for surreptitiously, and
As underhanded.
yeah, stealthy. I liked stealthy.
Yeah,
So-
stealthy.
Do you guys ever find it interesting that a lot of times when you go to look up a word, their quote unquote definition will just be a synonym for the word, right?
That's not a good dictionary.
Right? Yeah. I'm just saying, man. I've seen a lot of that.
Well, a lot of these are antiquated words, right? That people don't use anymore, and she'll use versions of your erudition.
Yeah, erudition. Yep.
Right. So I've heard erudite, right? And that's something that is fairly common in literature. But the act of becoming erudite, the ways that she used that word, that is uncommon. And there's a lot of like word forms and tenses and contextual uses of words that are like I never seen before. Like, I know this word, I didn't know you could do that to that word, and make it mean that next thing. That's definitely been something I've enjoyed in this. I don't know if it's because it's 19th century or because it's Blavatsky, but it's been challenging that way.
Yeah.
Well, John, to go along with your deconstruction definition, first paragraph of page 47. However, these disruptions can often become frustrating because they challenge and even destroy the system that we have worked so hard to build and throw us back into a state of uncertainty and confusion. The earnest student must be prepared to face this, since it is an essential part of the process of raising consciousness. So if you raise your consciousness, you participate in personal deconstruction.
Yeah.
The last line, same page, same paragraph. It is here in a state of formless contemplation that the higher realities can find fertile ground.
I underlined that sentence as well. And then I liked a double underlined formless contemplation. So I've read a lot of Plato, right? And I've read his theory of forms. How many times, right? Has everybody read Plato's theory of forms? Yeah,
Have
it's
not.
like it's the basis of all of his philosophy. Like if you don't understand his theory of forms, then basically none of his other dialogues really make any sense. And there's it's in the Republic, and it's a dialogue between Socrates and somebody else I don't remember. But the part I did remember is it basically says people initially see mere shadows, right, or like appearances, but eventually they can perceive real objects illuminated by the sun, and that is true forms. And so this is his theory and his conceptions of like kind of anthropogenesis and cosmogenesis, you know what I mean? Is it's this form, right? And eventually it becomes a recognizable form, and then we fill the form and it becomes existence or whatever. And so that formless contemplation, to me, that just was a very non-materialistic, non-human, non-based mind type of a contemplation, like a real high level spiritual contemplation. I don't know.
Same analogy. Plato's allegory of the cave. I interpret as what we are looking at isn't truth, isn't reality. What we are looking at is something other than truth. And what I find interesting about that's a very long time ago. And I've mentioned this before because it's another thing that fascinates me, is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which is the same idea. The looking at the thing changes it. The observation of the thing changes it. And so if we, anyway, this is going a little bit too out there perhaps, but what we are looking at isn't real, is not the thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Back to the Future.
Yeah, we're perceiving our own perception. Yeah. We're observing
Yeah.
our own perception of whatever that thing is. What's wild is that I'd never heard of Plato's allegory of the cave. And guess what? Yesterday, her nephew was plugging us into reading that. He's like, have you guys, we're on the drive to Pawhuska yesterday. And he's like, have you guys ever read Plato's allegory of the cave or whatever that is? And said no. And he sent me the link to it and everything. And I was getting ready to start into this thing. And here we are talking about it tonight.
Yeah.
That's
Dude.
very cool.
Yeah.
Your homework comes from all over the place, Johnny.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I have written down here. I really go back to my writings, like things that I've written out, and that at the end of 47 there's a blank spot at the bottom, that whole half of the page is unfilled. So like I fill it up, I go to writing, and when I do these writings, obviously it's done in a kind of a centered state of meditation, the best I know how to anyways. It's like allow the mind to remain open to all the new ideas. Do not become so fixed on one idea that it doesn't have room to be flexible. Allow all things to evolve and grow organically. And then that kind of goes back to I was wanting to talk about that for a second. On page 44, what is that? The third paragraph down, it was pointed out that in the East, in ancient times, gurus would give their disciples a brief aphorism or a sutra and tell them to go and meditate on it, and it's like talking about just that one, meditate on one single idea. Tim, you touched on that, that the universe kind of tell you to read that paragraph over and over and over because maybe I need to spend more time analyzing and better understanding it or whatever. I like that idea. I really like that idea. Another thing, John was talking about walk the walk today. I don't know if Tim, if you caught on to that, if you watched that last polo, but John was talking about walk the walk. And then Pamela brought that up out of nowhere, just out of the blue, those little connections, man, those little synchronicities, you know, it's pretty
Mhm.
cool, man.
Right. If you're paying attention, right? If it matters, if you're paying attention, it doesn't have to be anything, but if you actually intuit into stuff, you see it
Makes
all
it
over the
hard to
place.
believe in like coincidence or chance, you know.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
I can't do it. I can't
It's
believe
it's
in
the
that.
believing, it's the believing's the problem, right? You just
Yeah.
let go of that and
Yeah.
you just intuit it, you just pay attention.
I'll tell you guys what, I'm actually thoroughly excited to, because I'm really trying, right? The more we go through this book, like I'm really trying to change the way I think and the way I perceive and the way I'm like approaching all of this stuff. And I'm actually excited to finish this book. I know we're not even close to done yet, but to get into the secret doctrine with what we've learned from studying this book and to just go through it like that too and see what comes of it. I don't know.
Is it just me, or like the further, right? I use the analogy of the arrow, right? I'm an arrow and I've been fired and I'm flying, and you can't turn around, you can't go back once you know the truth, or when you come to your own truths, right? You can't go back, you want more, you continue to grow. Does anybody else have like the frustrations of being human? Right? Like I feel like, well, man, I'm on this path. I'm for lack of a better word, becoming enlightened, and yet I'm still human. I'm still a dumbass sometimes. I still get frustrated. I still lose my cool. I still subconsciously practice human like things, and it's like, why, man? When is this gonna go away?
Dude, so I was
My dad used to say it's a poor athlete that blames his equipment. And it is what it is, man. I mean, you can chuck your golf club in the lake if you want, but it's all you got. And you do the best with what you got, Johnny.
one day I was reading to Brittany about like the Buddhist light bodies. And she was like, why would anybody want that? And I was just like, but I do. Yeah, wouldn't it?
Oh, I heard something interesting about what we're talking about vaguely. 1/3 of all PhDs believe in ghosts.
Hmm.
That has to do with ethereal bodies. That's what brought up the thought.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Yeah.
One that is interesting. Very educated people.
Yeah. Random fact. You should do a
Random fact.
podcast or something with random facts by Pamela. I am not happy though with you, Pamela. You said something about you weren't impressed with the lyrics from The Devil's Symphony by Rolling Stone.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
That's a
just
wonderful
the
song.
lyrics don't say much to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean they were bad. They just didn't say
Right.
much to me.
Yeah. No, I was giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
So John, on the email or on the forms, so you're going to email them to us and then we fill them out on the computer and email them back, or is it a printing situation where we print and send them in ourselves?
I think the idea was people were going to fill it out there. If you went and you go to the website and sign up, but then you got to pay the $72, right? It's the form is the thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can print it off and then like scan it in and you can email it to her. It just needs to be on this application, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
I'm not going to turn it into a PDF for you or anything to where you can just have fillable fields. It's just going to be a scan. You
Okay.
can print it off, you can scan it back in and send it to them, or you can mail it to them or whatever. I'm sure you guys can figure out how to get it to all the contact information is at the top.
Yeah.
And figure out how to get this back to them with $50, and you'll be members for a whole year.
Yes. Cool.
So
hey, and then we'll be
I will get on that. No, and that's the thing. The idea of actually expanding this way of thinking and moving forward is super exciting to me. And even if it's just us, but you know what? We're like, we got no dogma in this group either. We're brand new. We're decide whatever we want to do. We're gonna make this into what we want to make it. And we get a little bit of legitimacy behind us. Watch out, right? So
yeah.
Anyway, thank you guys. I will get that out to you. Anything else, Mr. Chairman? I don't know, Tim. I don't know what your title is, but I'm going to keep saying that.
Just call me dude. I'm the dude.
Dude, the dude abides.
I'll read
Jefe.
yeah. I'll read this
Jefe,
read our
I like
next
that.
passage. We'll do our
Jefe.
2-minute meditation if you guys are cool with it. Let me set the alarm.
Yep.
All right. Man has to discover for himself that what he thinks as being himself. What he calls myself is an illusion, a Maya, which is but a cloak of many colors like those that appear on a bubble in the sunlight. 2 minutes.
Mom? When Raul comes tomorrow? I'm so sorry.
All right, that's been 2 minutes.
Hey, Tim, would you mind reading that one more time, bro?
I will.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
Man has to discover for himself that what he thinks as being himself. What he calls myself is an illusion, a Maya, which is but a cloak of many colors, like those that appear on a bubble in the sunlight.
Okay.
That's the thing is not the thing. What you're looking at is not real.
Not
Okay.
real. Yep.
Including the image that I have of myself.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
Mhm.
Cool, man.
Good being with y'all.
Absolutely.
Bubble's
You
gonna
say
float.
y'all? Are you from Oklahoma?
What?
No.
What?
Temptation.
I guess.
Bye, guys.
All right,
Bye.
see y'all.